Hey, I hit the right button this time. I almost hit the wrong one and was like, nope, that's not
Yes.
right, Max. Hit the right one. Hey,
Yes.
everyone. Welcome to Castles and Cantrips Tome of Knowledge, which is our Monday evening show where we talk about Dungeons and Dragons and talk about whatever we want. Either new news. I guess new news is just news, right?
New?
Yeah. News. We talk about
I
character
mean, there's old
building.
news.
Yeah.
Yes, there's new news, and then there's old news. So,
And then
and
there's
then
like,
there's
yeah.
news.
Then there's just news, which is like normal
Yeah,
news.
the 3 phases of news.
Yeah, the three phases of news. Well, whatever phase we're in now, we're going to talk about multiclassing here today. But if this is your first time here, welcome. And also, if you would be so inclined, go check out our YouTube. We're actually over there right now too, so you can open up a tab and mute it if you'd like, depending on what's your favorite platform. But it really helps us out if you do watch on YouTube, because we're trying to get enough watch hours to be monetized over there, so we can have emotes over there and more options and stuff like that. So really help us out. We've done amazing so far. We're I think halfway for the amount of watch hours we need in like a year cycle. So we're doing pretty well. So thank you all already. And then also, speaking of podcasts that I mentioned before, you can go to look at our podcasts, and that's anywhere where podcasts are listened to. It's out there. Castles and Cantrips. We've got Tome of Knowledge. We've got Out of Combat. We've got our campaign. All kinds of fun stuff out there. So welcome everybody. Hope you all are having a fantastic long weekend if you're here in the US. I feel like I was just talking and I wasted my weekend. It feels like a normal weekend, but that means I was tired and I just needed an extra reset
Does that
day.
mean you don't work Mondays normally, and you're just doing stuff?
Yeah, I don't know. It feels like I didn't have a long weekend. It just felt normal to me.
I
Feel
agree.
that. Yeah, let's say hi, Bun. Andrew, we got Yap, we got Amaro. Hello, friends. What's going on? I hope everyone's doing fantastic. Is chat? Are you for multi-classing? Are you against it, or is it too daunting to dip your feet in? I'm curious what chat thinks.
Hmm.
Because typically, as a player, don't really multi-class. And then maybe there's a reason for that, but we'll get into the meat today about it.
I love multiclassing.
It's definitely something I'm interested in for sure.
Hmm. So for those of you who don't know what multiclassing is, it's exactly like it sounds. It's multiple classes. And then I'll talk a little about what's in the player's handbook to kind of go over what multiclassing is, what it's not, some requirements and such, just to, I guess, get it out there if you're not familiar with it. But with that being said, multiclassing is selecting multiple classes, right? And how it works is when you normally level up, you add a level to your class. So let's say I'm a level 1 fighter, right? When I hit level 2, I can say I don't want to be a level 2 fighter. I want to be a level 1 fighter and a level 1 wizard. Who knows? Whatever you feel like. So that's essentially multiclassing. And I'll say multiclassing is an optional rule, meaning your DM has to approve of you doing it. Same thing for feats. So it's one of the optional character customizations in the book. The way that it works is once you have a character level, which is all your levels added up. So let's say that you're that level 1 fighter and level 1 wizard. You need the same amount of XP to get to level 3, like total, if that makes sense. I'm trying to find a better way to put it, but it's your overall character level. So going from wizard 1 to wizard 2 isn't the same as going from level 1 to level 2. You need all the experience to get to level 3, your total character level. But what's also interesting about multiclassing is that there's prerequisites involved. And I think the reason they did this is to try and add some balance to multiclassing. So with their prerequisites, go ahead. Yeah, it's fair.
Because third edition got way out of hand where you dipped in like 1 levels of 4 classes to get all the goodies. So like they learned their lessons. I think the prerequisites make sense.
Yeah. So we'll continue using my fighter wizard example. So the prerequisites for fighter and wizard. For wizard, you need of intelligence at least 13. And for a fighter, you need a strength or dexterity of 13. It's the only one with an or in it. But the way the prerequisites work is you have to meet the requirements of your current class and the class that you want to be as well. So I'd have to have intelligence 13 and either strength or dex of 13. And every single class is listed in there in the PHB, and they're all 13 is the ability score minimum, but it's differing based on what class. Like druids, it's wisdom, bards, it's charisma, that kind of stuff. So they add that to sort of um, add some balance. And there's also a sort of chart in the player's handbook where you only get certain proficiencies when you multi-class into a new class. You don't get everything they get at level 1. So, continuing on to my fighter wizard example, the proficiencies gained from multi-classing in wizard is nothing. You don't get any proficiencies from multi-classing into wizard, which is fine because you get spell casting and other things. But there are some things like, let's say that you wanted to multi-class into fighter instead. You start off a wizard, wanted to be multi-class into fighter. Well, when you multi-class into fighter, you get light armor, medium armor, shields, simple weapons, martial weapons, that kind of stuff. So if you know anything about fighters, normally they get heavy armor proficiency when you multi-class, or when you start as them, but when you multi-class into them, you don't get that. So there are some, I don't want to call it restrictions, but some guidelines as to what proficiencies you gain whenever you go into a multi-class. So things to keep in consideration.
Yeah,
And
that
mhm,
makes it where the first class you pick, if you already know you're gonna multi-class, the first class you're gonna pick is probably the most important one because of
mhm.
the proficiencies that you get. Because if yeah, because like you don't get anything for the wizard. If you start with wizard first, you don't get any
Armor
and
proficiencies,
yeah,
or yeah.
not mention like the max hit points too, if that's important. Like is you is going with a higher hit die more important to you at level 1, or is the
Mhm.
proficiencies, vice versa, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that is a good point because like you all of a sudden have shared hit dice too. So if
Yeah,
you're a fighter wizard, one of your hit dice is a D10 and one of them's a
6.
D6 at this point. So that's to take into consideration. Like proficiency bonus, that's based on your total character level, so that doesn't really get affected. But there's like some specific class features that get affected. So like extra attack. If you gain extra attack, so let's say that you're a barbarian 5 and a paladin 5, they both get extra attack at level 5. You only get it once. You don't get more extra attacks because you spent extra um, on those two classes. So it don't stack in that way. Same thing for like unarmored defense for like barbarian or monk and stuff like that. And then there's a whole thing about spellcasting and what multiclassing does to it and all those things. So I don't know if I want to necessarily read through all of that, but if you're thinking about multiclassing a spellcaster, you should probably take a look at it to make sure that everything coincides with what you're wanting to do.
So it sounds like for multiclassing, there's a fair bit of planning
Hmm.
required if you're trying to go that route. Um, it's not something you probably want to jump into without at least having some idea of a build or something you're after, because I'm sure we'll get into some specifics, but it can get pretty messy if you don't know what you're after,
Hmm.
and you could end up with a character that just has a bunch of things, but nothing really works out. So, multiclassing is for someone who has a kind of a specific idea for what they want and they know what they need to build it. And so that's what you kind of shoot for as you level up.
Hmm. Yeah, well put. It's you normally have some kind of plan when you're multi-classing. Not always. You can just do whatever you want and pick levels and however whatever your heart tells you. But usually there's some kind of plan to make sure things work out because it could be really easy to. I don't want to say like mess up, but it could be really easy to get something that where two classes don't really synergize unless it's what you're looking for. But most people
Um,
look for synergies whenever they're multi-classing.
I mean that yeah, that is because there's so many classes and subclasses currently. It is really easy to fall into like a trap of trying to put two classes together and mixing their subclasses to make something work. But I feel like with uh, fifth edition, uh, it is you are more likely to make two classes not synergize well together and just like you're not really good at anything. You're just kind of like a mid character, and I think it's really easy to fall in those pit traps and with fifth edition because there isn't really a focus or priority on multi-classing since it is an optional rule. They're like, if you want to multi-class, you can do it, but there there's always like the two, not the two, but there's always like a couple of classes that synergize really well and can like somewhat be OP. But for the most part, I would say it's like 87% bad, and then the rest good.
And it
Mhm.
just depends on what you're looking for as well. Like most important things to have fun whenever you whatever you build. If you think it's fun, that's great. I remember I multi-classed in a campaign I was in a couple of years ago where um it was pretty one dimensional. Like it did one thing really well, but didn't really do anything very well. But I still loved it. It was still fun. It was still fun for me. But what we've prepared for you all today is each of us have made a level 8 multi-classed character, and we're just going to kind of walk through like our thought process, like what we wanted to achieve, and kind of the general idea or general concept of our characters. And feel free to ask any questions if you're watching us live, and we'll try to answer as best we can, as always. But I say we jump into the builds and start getting down into brass tacks and
Let's do it.
see what we'll
Yeah.
do.
So we
And
all gave each other homework,
yeah,
and we're like, all right, if we're gonna talk about multi-classing, and what's the best thing to do about talking multi-class is actually making a multi-class characters.
yeah,
We're
yep.
gonna dip into our thought process and all that good stuff.
All right. VS, you've been randomly selected to
Great.
talk about our first one, and
Well,
there you are. There's I put the character sheet on the screen too, so we can kind of follow along with us if you're watching us live.
okay. So, yeah, we all created a multi-classic character. Mine was very last minute, but I've had an idea for some time rattling around in my head about picture a picture like a apex predator that skulks in the shadows, strikes fast and hard, and downs their prey lightning quick. Um, and so what I ended up coming up with was a shifter. Um, I looked at shifter. It sounds really cool. For those of you who don't know, it's a humanoid that has some bestial traits from some past lycanthropic sort of thing going on. They can't fully transform into a beast, but they can shift forms and take on certain features of a beast-like creature. They can have fur or claws, however you flavor it. I did 5 levels of ranger, with the subclass being gloomstalker, and 3 levels of rogue, with the subclass being scout.
Nice.
Um, to me, looking through all the things, I felt these synergized incredibly well, especially if you go the archery route, which is one thing that Gloomstalkers are very good at. Um, uh, Gloomstalkers, on what is the first round of combat, they essentially get an extra attack, where you can make 2 attacks on the first round, and it's basically like lightning fast strikes right off the get go. You get bonus to your initiative, so your chances of getting a high initiative roll are up there. Um, and to kind of fit into that sort of predator stalking in the shadows, like a quick beast moving around an area, they have pretty good movement speed. Um, I picked the shifter option called long, or what is it? Swift stride, something like that. Your movement speed is increased by 10 feet when you're shifted, and you can also, as a reaction, if somebody ends a turn next to you, you can jump 10 feet away without provoking an opportunity
Oh,
attack.
that's awesome.
Yes. Um, the other thing is apex predators tend to have excellent eyesight. Um, they need to lock down their prey visually, and so for my um, defeat at fourth level, since I am 5 levels in Ranger, you get your fourth level ability score increase or feat. I chose for a bit of flavor and a bit of usefulness. What is it?
Observant looks like.
Observant.
Mhm.
Yes, which gives you a boost to your passive perception, a little bit to your perception modifier, I believe. You can read lips from a distance, but the biggest thing is with this current setup, you're sitting at a 20 passive perception,
Yeah.
so you're not missing anything.
No.
You're seeing everything going on around you, you're hearing everything.
What's also
Um,
interesting that you did too, in related, because I thought you were going in one direction, but I didn't know you had that feat. Is when you have Gloomstalker, you also have Umbral Sight,
uh-huh.
right?
And you get a
Which,
boosted dark vision out. Shifters get dark vision initially, which is 60 feet. And then because of Umbral Sight, if you already have dark vision, you tack on another 30 feet. So essentially, you can see out to 90 feet in the dark, which is incredibly far. And so, couple that with your 20 passive vision and hearing, you're not missing much of anything. You could also do something like alert instead to fit the theme as well. If you just want to be on the very tip top of the initiative order,
Mhm.
but I like this better. I like the idea of a character that can kind of lead a party through the wilderness and just be laser sharp on everything. Can know
S-
what's around them, what's hostile.
so
Um,
you've talked about a lot about the Ranger stuff and some of the stuff you got from being a shifter. What's some of the rogue things that kind of spoke to you that would make you want to multi-class, especially into Scout?
so as we were saying, you have a total character level. We're sitting at level 8, which means I've taken 3 levels of Rogue. Uh, at level 2 Rogue, you get sneak attack. Most of you are familiar with. That's just extra damage if you have advantage on somebody or if they're next to a teammate, which is great when at this level you essentially get 3 attacks on the first round. So 3 chances for sneak attack, and then 2 attacks every other round. Um, but the subclass skirmisher, funnily enough, also has uh, a bit of redundancy with the shifter, where they have almost the same exact thing with the swift stride, where somebody ends their turn within 5 feet of you, you can move away. I think it's 5 feet for skirmisher or for scout.
Half your
So
movement.
half your movement.
Mhm.
So half your movement plus another 10 from the swift stride, and you're able to jump like well away, which benefits your archery. You get disadvantage if somebody's next to you if you try to hit them. This lets you just leap like a pretty long distance away, so you can kind of restart things and maybe use your bonus action on your turn to attempt to hide or move somewhere else across the map. What can't remember exactly what else.
The
Uh,
survivalist part is interesting too of Scout, as you kind of talked about being that apex predator in the wilderness, a little bit of out of combat utility as
yeah.
well.
So um, Ranger kind of you can potentially have some proficiencies with survival, at least from Ranger as well, and nature. I think
Mhm.
I went a little bit differently because I figured since I'm getting proficiencies from survivalist, I took some other ones from my Ranger, so acrobatics and stealth. But across the board, you're pretty much going to be the go-to person if your party's out on the road, like in the environment. You'll be able to lead, and if hostile situations arise, you have a really good chance to do a lot of damage on the first round and do it quickly. Um, so it really, especially with the shifter being able to use your bonus action to kind of take on a more beast-like appearance. I just picture a sort of half, not quite werewolf creature, but humanoid with cool animal features, just like darting in and out of tree lines and shrubs and just annihilating people with arrows. I think most things synergize well. We didn't even get into the spells that I picked yet. Um, you can have first and second level spells
Mm-hmm.
as a ranger. Um, Stuff like Hunter's Mark, or I picked up Long Strider again to boost movement speed further. If you really want
Mm-hmm.
to, you can cast that before a combat scenario. Um, yeah, Pass Without a Trace, so you can give your whole party more stealth. I think I try to stay thematic with what I was trying to go for, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it works pretty well, and I think it would be a fun character for somebody who wants that classic stealth archer with like a sort of animal twist.
Mm-hmm. You've got spike growth too, which is great if people have to come to you
Yes,
being
I was
ranged.
thinking it's a hard spell to pass up because it's very good, and you can kind of basically zone off an area for yourself if you really wanted to keep people away potentially. So, or you could place it in a way that's beneficial to your team. If you got people that can move targets around, they can push targets into the spikes. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's a useful spell. I don't know how often you'd cast it, but it's there.
When it works really well in
Yeah.
my experience. One thing I wanted to highlight too, and when we talked about survivalist, which it says you gives you nature and survival, and your proficiency bonus is double, basically expertise. But then rogue also gets expertise. So you've got four skills here that are you have expertise in. Acrobatics is a +9, your nature's a +5, your stealth's a +9, your survival's +8. Definitely fits well into like the theme that you had here. I think it's
Yeah.
really cool.
And again, this is, I mean, this could do well in certain campaigns where maybe classic sort of D&D campaigns where you're traversing the environment, a majority of it, like exploring. Um, it also could have some usefulness if your campaigns are taking place primarily in like an urban environment because you still get a lot of stealth and perception utility there.
Mm-hmm.
And, Gloomstalker is very strong and it synergizes well with sneak attack and all that. So you can be effective in most campaigns with this build. More so if you spend a lot of time in the outdoors, which is what I wanted. So
Yeah, I think that's a solid, well synergized multi-class, and like Gloomstalker's like probably one of my favorites, most
glad for
favorite
putting
Mm-hmm.
it
classes
together in like 10 minutes.
for rangers.
Yeah, Gloomstalker's great, and I think Scout's great as a rogue subclass too. So I think it's a really, like we were saying, it was a really good synergetic character. Any downsides? Any of y'all you see so far in this build?
uh,
uh,
for a level
Downside?
8, it's very strong.
Not I don't see any. It's just like a solid class combination, and yeah, you could potentially do a ridiculous amount of damage, and yeah, just I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any downsides to this combination.
Yeah, I think the only thing than what you mentioned are the kind of overlap between Shifter and Scout, like their features, because I don't know if they would stack or not. The five
Yeah, I
feet
don't
using
know.
your reaction because you have
Mm.
to pick one or the other one, which is really minor, to be
Yeah.
honest. And then
It didn't bother me so much because I was
yeah,
like, it probably doesn't stack, but if the DM says it can stack, that'd be super funny to just leap like 40 feet away. Be broken,
yeah,
kind of.
yeah, and Rogue's really good in this case because Rogue really only cares about Dex, and then
Mhm.
your Ranger cares about Dex and Wisdom. So not too crazy with all the different ability scores you might need for this. No, I think it's great.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a little bit of min maxing, but not to the extreme. I used point buy. So
Mm-hmm.
my only aid is intelligence, and for somebody that's out in the wilderness, they're not book learned, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I did bump, strength to 10 and charisma to 10 because I like the idea of it's a little bit of an RP thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the min max to the extreme. I like to still have some like, oh, my character is relatively strong, like no less strong than the average human or whatever, and charisma
Mm-hmm.
is like fine. You
Yeah,
could totally just dump all those and I guess bump something else, but
yeah, I'm with you. A lot of times I don't like to do that. Uh, I think yeah, the only thing you've got your longbow, and then you've got what leather, but at level 8 you probably have studded leather anyway, to be honest. So you'd probably be 15 AC, which is solid.
Yeah, I picked the starting equipment. I didn't
Yeah,
have
yeah,
time to
yeah.
look at some.
No, totally valid. Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
think it's good. I think a lot of a lot of the drawbacks are just in the individual classes. Like with your spells, just being a ranger, everything good's concentration. So you're
yeah.
having to compete there, but
Yeah,
that's nothing new to multiclassing. Like that's not a
The only
multiclassing
other
problem.
the only other rogue subclass I could think of maybe that had some useful stuff is assassin.
Yeah,
That's
essentially.
the
yeah.
kind of the problem with some of the other rogue subclasses is their level 3 features are like meh
Yeah, some of
on
them are,
most of
yeah.
them. So, and they didn't really fit with the theme.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
see a whole lot of downsides from the build that like and how you want to play them.
it's essentially a good old stealth archer from like Skyrim.
Yep,
Yep.
you're a
Yep.
Khajiit stealth archer.
Hmm.
Congratulations.
Pretty much.
Anything else before we move on? And I'm gonna have you go next. Moves.
Sure.
All good. All right, let's
Hmm.
go over
Yeah.
to Moobs' character. There are some questions in the chat though. I'll see. I see that
Yeah.
Livid has said, in your opinion, would it be feasible to make a monk fighter that heals by punching? Oh, and then you said sorry, cleric fighter. A monk fighter, yes, because there is literally a monk subclass that is a healing monk. So
Mercy.
100%, yeah, viable.
Yeah.
Cleric fighter, yeah, I mean you could make a cleric fighter, no problem, because clerics rely on wisdom. And then their secondaries either strength or dex, which leads right into a fighter. So the only problem you're gonna have is choosing um which of those to kind of if you want to favor one or the other, because with the cleric, the more you dump into fighter, the less levels spells you're gonna have. That's the one thing a downside of spellcasters multiclassing into a non-spellcasting class is
Yeah.
you're gonna miss out on the super high level spells at high level. But
Also, a bit of the action economy as well, because when you
yeah,
cast a spell, you don't get your extra attack if you had it, and so on
hmm,
and so forth.
yeah, very true, very true. Definitely possible. Try it out. Build it if you don't like it, and try something else.
Yeah. You just make characters for funsies like we did here, just so we could talk about multiclassing
Hmm.
and then if it looks good on paper and see what happens.
Hmm. All right, let's jump over to you, Moobs, for your character.
All right. My character is Thorgrin Hellscream. So I played around with the idea of in my mind rather than like a multi-class that would work together well. I was like, oh, a barbarian? What's more cool than a barbarian? It's like super metal, screaming at their opponents and rocking out. So I was like, oh man, that sounds like a cool idea. Let's see if I can actually put a barbarian together. I struggled with the races. I was like, oh well, if I could go like I can go super metal and just be like a half orc or Goliath. And then I was like, oh, what if I do fairy instead? And because fairies are small, and then it'd be like when the for the bard part when the fairy would just be like think of like Slipknot, where he's also great at singing, and then when the music goes real hard, they go fucking hard. And then, fairies also get enlarge or reduce. So I was like, "Well, if they're gonna rock out and start raging, they just make themselves big." But then, like, that's when I came into some issues there.
Hmm.
I was like, and then I was just, like, looking at the races. I was like, "Oh, hobgoblin. Hobgoblins are cool." And I didn't really actually know what hobgoblins did, like, racially. And then I was like, "Oh, wow, that's very synergistic with bard." So I was like, "Alright, cool. I'll go with hobgoblin." Um, and then I went mostly barbarian, and then I dipped into bard for 3. So for barbarian, subclass, I went with, um, what's it called? The ancient
Ancestral Guardians, Path of
it's yeah,
Ancestral
that's right, yeah.
Guardians.
Ancestral guardians, because when I read the description, that you summon your ancestors to attack a target, they don't really attack, but in my mind, like RP wise, I was like, dude, I'm summoning a band. Okay, and we're gonna take out our enemies. So like I'm the lead singer, and then my ancestors are the performing members of the band. It's gonna be super cool. Uh, so, for me, it was more of the idea and the RP element of the class, and rather the two classes working well together. I guess in a way it does work out, because I didn't really have a plan other than putting these two classes together to fulfill this RP moment that I built in my mind. Um, and then for Bard, we got to level 3, I chose, the School of Whispers, because I saw that they get to use, Psychic Blade. They get to use their, Bardic Inspiration to deal 2d6 psychic damage. So I was like, "Oh, yeah, so that's like the lead singer stabbing a dude and then insulting him with, like, metal singing or something like that."
Mhm.
Like, "You suck, yeah, and then, like, your ancestors are rocking out. Um, and then the, words of terror, that you can make enemies become frightened, and that's just, like, another RP element of, like, the lead singer screaming, at the enemies and causing them to have fear. I was like, "Yeah, this is super cool," and then I was, like, looking at spells, and then I was like, "Oh, wait, I forgot about rage. You can't concentrate on spells or cast spells while you're raging." So I'm like, "Oh,
Mhm.
dang." I was like, "Well, that kinda sucks," but I was able to, like, spin it in a way I was like, "Okay, well, I won't be able to cast spells or concentrate, but I still will be able to use Bardic Inspiration, um, as a bard while raging, so we can still use the Psychic Blades." And originally, I went Strength instead of Dex, and I was like, "Well, my AC is kinda low, and I'm not really utilizing unarmored defense."
Mhm.
Um, and I do get to use shields though, so I actually swapped strength for dex so I can have actually higher AC. So I kinda went in a way where again that also doesn't help with rage because like rage damage is based on strength-based weapons and I'm using
Mhm.
dex-based weapons. So I was like, you know what? Well, we'll forget about the strength stuff. What we're gonna use rage for is to make a really tanky bard. With unarmored defense, being able to use a shield, and then raging with like a 17 armor class, um, and then taking half damage for raging. So I was like, yeah, we could just make a really support tanky barb or barbarian. Uh, and then, uh, but yeah, I can again like so like there's a lot of synergies of like ancestral protectors where I can select a target and then they don't hit me, they get disadvantage. And then the cool thing with, uh, the fortune from the many, um, from the bard side, or is that, the bugbear side? I forget. Yeah,
Oh,
the
the
bugbear side.
hobgoblin?
Oh, yeah, sorry, hobgoblin. If you miss an attack or fail a saving throw, you could gain a bonus equal to the number of allies you can see. That was super
Mm.
cool. And then the Fey gift from hobgoblin. There's like 3 different Fey gifts, like hospitality, so I could give you yourself and an ally temporary hit points. Um, there's just like a lot of cool synergy of being like a support tank. Um, but I think like when it comes down to it, I think it would still be a fun character to play just for like the RP element. And then like being I guess I think it would be successful as a tank, as a bard barbarian if I was to take the sentinel feat, for example.
Mhm.
But I think like I the only use I'm getting from barbarian is like the extra attack and
Mhm.
the damage reduction from rage. But because I'm not utilizing the strength from
Mhm.
raging, so I don't get the extra damage and all that stuff. And then I pretty much lose my ability to cast spells once I rage.
Mhm.
But like outside of rage and combat, there's still a lot of utility stuff that I could do as a character. But I still think it's a fun
Mhm.
character, but I don't think in my mind it was really cool, but on paper it may not work out too well.
Yeah, you still get unarmored defense. You mentioned reckless attack, danger sense, which is great for barbarians as well. And you also get your extra movement as well from
Yeah.
level 5 barbarians. You're moving at 40. What spells did you pick for your bard?
Uh,
Part of the barbarian.
So my cantrips, I ticked Prestidigitation, of course, for like the Rockstar Flare, and then Vicious Mockery. So I'm like
Mhm,
bellowing like these like either like these super metal like or like high falsetto stuff. And then I chose Bane because like my character is so metal that the enemy I chose Bane instead of Bless, where enemies would have like they would roll a d4 to negate their rules for attack and saving throws.
mhm.
Dissonant Whispers again, just for like that metal vibe. And then I picked Silvery Barb as a reaction spell.
'Cause why wouldn't
Because I
you?
thought, yeah, but I thought it was really cool because then um you can help uh someone succeed on a check.
Mhm, mhm.
And then for level 2 spells, I chose I Cure Wounds, just for, like, that healing supporting. And then for level 2 spells, I picked Hold Person, because in my mind, it's like, "Oh, you're enthralling your music is so enthralling that that person's paralyzed." And then Heat Metal was just, like, a solid, um, like, again, with, like, the metal theme of, like, this metal rock
Mhm.
star. It's like you're burning the metal, but then once you rage, all that goes away, so I was like,
Yeah, and then you also have, like, from the bard side of things, like, your skills, you have the jack of all trades where you have essentially, like, half proficiency in everything, and then it looks like you have those expertise in performance and persuasion too with plus 10s, which is great.
Yeah.
yeah, really high, so really I just wanted to live that rockstar god vibe for this character. So I think it works well, but it just yeah, maybe the rage just some elements of barbarian won't synergize that well with bard.
Yeah, I think you've done really well of putting a bard and a barbarian together, which is probably a difficult task. But that's the thing with barbarians is you're always going to run into the rage limitation of like you can't cast spells, you can't concentrate on spells once you're raging, which is going to hinder you a lot. But it's more there's less synergy but more options to you. It feels like you either rage or you cast spells.
Yeah. So I think I guess it kind of gives you that option. Um like if you're gonna go to tank mode, then yeah, you have to rage, but then you won't be able to cast spell.
Hmm.
I don't know what's available to uh a level 3 bard spells wise, but I imagine like you have your combat sort of persona, which is shit's hitting the fan, and you go full like tank support mode in combat. Then out of combat is you can have like you know the full bardic flair going on.
Yeah, yeah. I that's why this for me this character would be like more this would fill my role playing um element of the game rather than like being like a damage dealer combat god. So this
Did
is
you say
more
you
like
picked
an RPG.
Sentinel? Or-
If I picked a feat, I would have done Sentinel. But
Okay, because you could do something funny with that, and whenever you catch an enemy with Sentinel, be like, "You got front row tickets, and you're not going anywhere."
yeah, the one liners are pretty strong
Hmm.
with the barbarian.
Hmm. Yeah, totally. One thing that we brought up VS of you have like your combat persona and then your out of combat persona. I think a cool way to get around the pesky like the can't cast spells when you rage is maybe take like a whole bunch of just like utility spells that you wouldn't
Yeah,
even use in combat. That could
Yeah.
be cool too. Is you
that's what
do
I
all
was
your spell
thinking.
casting outside. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I just didn't know how many utility things were available at 3rd level
Hmm.
bard.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
And
No,
you
I
get
think it's
level 1 and
great.
2 spells, so, I think you get there's a good amount of utility for a level 3, bard.
Mhm, yeah, yeah, 100%.
was there any other bard subclass that you felt like you could have picked other than the one you did?
I was looking at
Like maybe
sword.
swords bard or
Yeah,
something?
I was thinking of sword, and I almost went with sword, but then when I was reading Whispers, I really liked the idea of using bardic inspiration to deal 2d6 extra damage as
Mhm.
I'm singing so high, my falsetto is so high, it's piercing their ears, and they just so for me, it was more about the theme of the character
Yeah,
rather than but that I
yeah.
like that theme better than just going sword barb. Um,
Mhm.
I like the whisper a lot better, especially with, like, the fear scream too. I was like,
I
yeah,
think I do
it all
too.
plays into it.
Yeah, I
I like
agree.
it the flavor of it better.
Yeah.
I just wondered if you had a secondary, which one it would be.
Yeah, it would have been sword, but I was like, no, Whisper sounds much cooler. It makes him a more interesting character.
Hmm. And you went with it looks like your highest stats, what, 18 charisma, 16 dex, and then you have your eights in intelligence and wisdom to
What
get
weapon
there.
are what weapons were you using? I don't think
I
did I
chose
miss
a
that?
rapier. Initially, I chose longsword, like sword and board, and then when I was realizing that like my AC was too low to be like a tank
Mm.
barbarian, I swapped, and I focused on dex more than strength, and then I switched to rapier because it's a finesse weapon.
Interesting. Very interesting.
I think it's still a fun character.
Yeah. Great concept for sure.
I don't know how it will play out. Like if your main focus was combat, I don't know how it'd play out.
You'd have to come up with a pretty gnarly rapier design.
Yeah. Maybe if we do like maybe in a one shot in the future, I can like remake this character and
Hmm.
That'd be fun.
see what happens.
Yeah. One thing too, um, is with barbarian, you don't have to use unarmored defense. You could just get half plate armor and then use something with strength too. Um,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but for me, I was like, well, I want to
mhm.
utilize unarmed defense, and I want that fast movement.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Wearing armor, I would lose those things. So what's the point of multiclassing and barbarian
yeah.
if
Totally,
I can't utilize those features?
100%. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Any other thoughts on Thorgrin Hellscream?
Looks fun.
I like it. Y'all want me to move on to mine?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right,
Oh, guitar axe. Yeah, that'd be good.
a guitar axe. Yeah, amazing. I've made my character's name is Klaus, and they are a bugbear barbarian rogue. Which is interesting. Which
Whoa!
is
Mm.
interesting that
Wow!
that you had a barbarian and then VS had a rogue, so I made a barbarian rogue.
Usually, when we didn't tell each other what we were making
Uh
either,
huh.
like because we were just like, yeah, we'll just make characters and then we'll see what happens. So, like
See, with
before
with
we like,
with the
Hmm.
one D
go
and D barb rules, you could just use strength for your stealth rolls. You're a
yeah,
rogue.
Yeah. So we'll get into, so I've got 18 strength, 14 dex, 16 con, 8 intelligence, 12 wisdom, 8 charisma. So I put 2 8s in there. I normally don't do that, but I did. So I went barbarian first and then took rogue second. So I'll go into some of the details that I like about the bugbear pick first. So with bugbear, they immediately get proficiency in stealth. They also have dark vision. They have Fey ancestry, so you have advantage on saving throws to avoid or end charm conditions. The really cool one is long limbed. So when you make a melee attack on your turn, your reach for it is 5 foot greater than normal. So they have reach on their turn essentially. They also have powerful build. And there's a sneaky that I mentioned, and then they have surprise attack. So if you hit a creature that has not taken a turn yet in the current combat with an attack roll, it takes an extra 2d6 damage. So if you can get to someone first, they take a nice big hit in the first round. So for my barbarian subclass, and we talked about rage, unarmored defense, reckless attack, danger sense, all that stuff. I chose Path of the Beast for my barbarian subclass, and specifically Path of the Beast, which is I would use Form of the Beast claws. So with claws, and I'm pulling it up so I can read it here. When you enter your rage, you transform, basically kind of like your shifter almost, but they transform when they rage. And until it ends, you manifest some sort of natural weapon. You add your strength mod to the attack rolls. So when I choose claws, each of your hands transforms into a claw, which you can use as a weapon if it's empty. It deals 1d6 slashing damage on a hit, and then once on each of your turns, when you attack with a claw using the attack action, you can make one additional claw attack as part of the same action. So you got claws, you attack, there you go.
So it's like the light weapon property almost.
Um, they're not light, but yeah, once you make one attack, you can make another attack with it. One additional claw attack. Um, So that's what I did for the barbarian, and then form of the beast. For my rogue, I went with soul knife. So I have the same roguish things like expertise, sneak attack, thieves can't, all that, cunning action. But with soul knife, the cool thing about that is you have psychic blades. So when you make an attack action, you manifest a psychic blade in your free hand, and then you make an attack with that blade. And then you can throw it or you can stab with it. And then aside from that, you can also use a bonus action to do it again, essentially. So I think you guys might know where I'm going with with some of this. So my thought process on this character. So the idea of an attack with this character, they've got extra attack from barbarian. So first off, I would use my attack action to do the soul knife. I'd create a blade in their hand, and I'd either stab with it. Yeah, I would stab with it because I can be 10 feet away and stab with it, which could help with sneak attack. If I don't get sneak attack there, bonus action with the blade again. And then for my second half of extra attack, I use the claw. So I claw one person and then immediately get to claw them again. So 4 attacks on one turn, essentially. So that's kind of why I did that. Just because I saw that could possibly work and thought, why the hell not? Let's see if we can build it and see if it works. Yeah. The only downside I can see is that their claw attacks aren't finesse weapons, so you can't sneak attack with them, which is what the soul knife blades are for. So essentially they don't have any weapons. They walk around with nothing, and then they either have claws or their little soul knives. And there's some other utility too with their psionic dice. So the psi bolstered knack, which is really cool, which if you fail an ability check using a skill or a tool that you're proficient in, you can roll one of your psionic dice to add that number to the check. And then there's also a cool thing with psychic whispers where you can basically get a telepathic bond with a certain number of creatures for a number of hours per day. So it allows you to speak telepathically to people for a little bit. Just some fun flavor there. Some other interesting things that I did. So I gave him half plate, level 8. You know, he's probably gonna have half plate, which makes him disadvantaged in stealth, brings his AC up to 17. But being a barbarian, still has armor defense. So if he needs to, he can drop his half plate, take it off, still have 15 AC, get that 40 feet movement, and he has proficiency in stealth with a +5 still. With the one other cool thing with, I believe it was, yeah, with the rogue portion of it, is I added my expertise in athletics and perception is what I chose. So he's got a +10 athletics, +7 perception, and then, you know, that's kind of the build in a nutshell. His passive perception is really good at that point. They've got some other cool things from the barbarian with the, what we mentioned earlier, with being able to avoid some danger with the danger sense. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anything in particular. Oh, the cool thing about sneak attack, some people don't know, or that maybe don't realize, is with sneak attack, it just has to be a finesse weapon or a range weapon. You don't have to use dex with it. So you could stab somebody with a rapier or a dagger or soul knives in this case and still use your strength. So that's kind of what I'm doing with that. It just has to be a finesse weapon, which finesse weapon lets you choose strength or dex. So I made essentially a strength rogue.
I think that's funny because you went strength rogue, I went dex barbarian.
Yeah.
You know, so we're like
yeah,
picking classes what they're not. I don't know. I wouldn't say not built for, but like an unorthodox way to build your character. I think
Now,
it's pretty fun.
I don't remember. Are you? What is required for reckless attacks? Do you have to have a? Do you have to use your strength only, or is that?
reckless attack, no. So you can just say you're doing reckless and get
Yeah,
advantage.
you
It's
get
using
Okay,
strength.
okay.
It is using strength
You
though.
get strength. Yeah, it is.
It is using strength, so that synergizes
So
with the
that applies
barbarian.
to your claws, so you're getting advantage on your claw attack.
That also applies to the soul knives. I'm using strength for them
Oh
too.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. So you have like
Another thing I can't use for my build, but
yeah. So reckless attack, which also means that if using reckless attack, you have sneak attack immediately because it gives you
yeah.
advantage
oh,
on
yep.
the attack. So it's
And with your reach and being able to hit somebody at 10 feet rather than being right up on them, you can, even though they have advantage, you can kind of keep people literally at arm's length.
yep,
And so
yeah.
you might not even take that advantage attack against you.
The disadvantage you have because of reckless attack. Yeah, that was my thought of why I've always wanted to make a bugbear character, and I just kind of threw this together. And being 10 feet away, having that reach, doing my attacks, and then just move. Like I don't even have to use my bonus action if I don't want to, because I've got the 40 feet movement, so I can
Yeah.
just go away. If I really need to go, I just don't use my bonus action soul knife, and then just use my bonus action for cunning action from the rogue side, and then get that essentially double movement, right? And just dash away.
I think you with having reach too, you can trigger more like attack of opportunities,
Mm.
which is then you can also get another sneak attack.
Yeah, because it's just on a turn. It doesn't have to be per
Yeah.
round.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
attack of opportunity. I wonder if it's. I'll have to look real quick on the side if they leave your reach or if they leave from being adjacent from you.
I
I
think it's
think
reach.
reach. You might need a.
Let's see here. Yeah, you make an attack of opportunity when a hostile creature that you can see moves out of your reach. So if they try to run, it's still the same. So they can move 5 feet away from you though, without getting an opportunity attack. But it's just that they
Yeah.
leave your reach.
Wait, did you take what feat? Did you take a feat?
I didn't
Did I
take
miss?
a feat.
You
I
didn't
took
take a
ability
feat?
score improvement. Yeah,
Gotcha.
I took the ASI to get my constitution and strength up. So I had the 18 and 16.
I think I find it really interesting that like we have two barbarians, but they play so extremely
Mm-hmm.
different because of we multi-classed,
Oh yeah.
and then that VS and Max we both picked Rogue as the multi-class. But still, because you're a ranger rogue, you are play very different from where Max is like a melee psych attack
Yeah.
rogue.
I shied away from trying to do spellcaster multiclass because I've never even played a spellcaster, so it would probably be a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. The yeah, the only negatives I see on my end that I've thought about are if I'm wearing the armor, disadvantage on stealth. I don't get the extra movement. I don't think.
Mhm.
I think fast movement is only if you're wearing heavy armor. So half plate's not heavy armor; it's medium armor. So yeah, the only thing is the disadvantage of stealth. Which if you're doing something stealthy, just take the armor off and lose 2 AC and call it good. But
Yeah. Oh yeah. Just yeah, you're right.
It definitely
Only
creates
when
an
you're not wearing heavy armor.
mhm.
it creates a unique visual in my head of this like creature with long arms just slinging around manifested daggers and clawing people.
Yeah, yeah.
I think
I
if you
just go ahead.
if your DM was cool with it, he would allow you to have like your psionic claws instead of blades. And
Oh
you
yeah, yeah. You could easily
claw
flavor
everything.
those like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. That'd be an easy way to flavor it. Yeah, I like the idea of this character potentially just walking around with just no weapons at all.
Yeah.
Like they don't have to at this point.
Yeah,
So
that's very cool.
yeah.
I don't know. What do you guys? What does chat think of our three multi classes? And then welcome Untoasted Toast and Bonsai Quest.
Untoasted toast, amazing.
I think we had a nice spread of different stuff. We had the really
Mhm.
super synergetic one with what I did. We had
Yeah.
the hugely flavorful one with moves, and then Max's works extremely well as well. Like there's a whole bunch of variety there, which is really cool.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think it's interesting in all of the multi classes that we picked. um, each one of them gave us a lot of out of combat utility, which I think is super cool, especially like
Yeah.
with moves with your bard, and then with me and VS with the rogue. It's like instant out of combat utility to be able to do cool stuff instead of just combat. So
Yep.
I mean, I can't wait for these 3 characters to be in a game together, or maybe NPCs we find in the world, who knows? I don't know.
yeah, I will say that let's talk about a little bit of like the pros and cons of multiclassing in general, because I just thought of this too. Is as we're starting into this, we're like, hey, make like a level 7, level 8, whatever character, right? So you're building it all at once. The I guess the downside of these is that some multi-class options, they take a while to sort of come online. They take some
Yeah.
time to like be their maximum potential. And that's kind of the rough part with multi-classing, where you kind of have to weigh like how many levels of this do I take before I do the next one. That's kind of the
Mhm.
downside. I
Yeah,
think
like,
one of the glaring ones.
if you're starting at level 1, it probably will feel like a slog because yeah, again, we won't a lot of this stuff didn't happen till we're, like, level 7, level 8, right? Like, if you're starting at that level, then it's fine, but then, um, like, the does your DM require it to be for you to multiclass? It has to be incorporated in the story, so you don't really level up until you complete the story segment. Like, how do you gain these powers? How do you learn all this stuff? So, yeah, I do agree. Yeah, it could be a slog if you're starting low level, working your way up. That
Mhm.
Because
you won't feel useful, or maybe like you don't feel like you're doing a good job until yeah you hit those synergistic levels.
Mhm.
yeah, knowing where you're gonna start picking up your alternate class levels is big because, for instance, you can level 1 to 3, you could, pick your be a level 3 ranger, pick your subclass. But then if you decide to take a level of fighter or rogue after that, that pushes back when you're gonna get like your extra attack and when you're
Mhm.
gonna get your ability score increase. So you have to like decide where you want something to happen, basically, as you're planning out your build.
Yeah, especially mine. Like mine, like if I were playing this from level 1, I would just have to do barbarian at 5 levels and then dip into rogue after that, because it doesn't work for like what I wanted to do
Yeah.
until I get my like subclass or do some other things like to kind of get myself there until it happens.
Well, VS brought up a good thing too about the ASIs, the ability score increase.
Yeah.
Like if you do level 3, like for if I did level 3 barbarian and level 3 bard, I wouldn't get an ability score improvement, even though
Mm-mm.
I'm an effective level 6 character,
Yeah.
which
Mm-hmm.
it kind of sucks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
6 levels without, a score increase or being able to pick a feat
Yeah,
is a
4
long
feet.
time.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah. And that's even longer without an extra attack, like,
Yeah.
That's why I think it shouldn't be class level, it should be effective class level, like your total level rather than your class level for those ability increasements or feat. Just so people can, if they wanna build a character
I, th-
that way, be
I
3 and
think
3.
I think that's part of the balance of multi-classing,
yeah,
because you get all these brand new abilities for having two classes. I think it's part of the balance. Otherwise, there'd be no reason not to.
yeah. Because like, when I was making mine, I knew, like, if I was making this build to play, I would be level 1 to 5 going ranger because I want my extra attack and my ability
Hmm.
score increased. What I get from rogue is nice, the sneak attack's nice, but it's not nice enough for me to take 2 levels of rogue prior to taking 5 levels of ranger. It's just
Hmm.
not. So, and delaying everything else.
Hmm.
That's
So,
tough because if we weren't level 8 out of the gate, I don't think I would play this character,
Hmm.
like, because of I'm using Dex, being a Dex barbarian, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, if we were, like, level 3 or whatever, yeah, I don't think I would've gone this route.
That also brings up a good point. Is uh, you see a lot of like builds online or like min max stuff, and the reality of it is it looks great on paper if you're like a level 15 character, but number one, you have to get to level 15,
Mhm.
and number two, like you have to play in a campaign long enough. like getting
Yeah.
through
Yep.
all of it anyway. Yeah, that's why like when you look up builds and you look up different things like that, like take those with a grain of salt, because if someone has a fully optimized level 20 character, like how often are you actually going to play something that's up to level 20, other than just like a one-off or like a multi year campaign? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
shit, we played 2 years and didn't. I mean, we only got to what was it, 14, 13? I don't remember.
13. 13.
Yeah,
Yeah, because it could be like one of those things where that build does a bunch of crazy stuff, but if half that stuff doesn't come online till after you're like level 14 or something, then it's like,
yeah.
you know,
What's the
fine.
point?
Yeah. Save those for like one shots and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for
Yep.
sure.
That
Yeah, that's multi-classing in a nutshell. Three very different builds, three very different takes on it. And there's, I mean, whatever combinations you set your mind to, you can do it pretty much as
and
long
it
as you meet the requirements.
and to bring things back towards what you said in the beginning, this stuff's entirely optional. Your
Hmm.
group may not want it, or your DM might have their own homebrewed rules for it. So, you know, always do your session
Yeah.
zero stuff, man.
As long as you're having fun. That's the most important thing.
Hmm.
You make a super unsynergistic multi-class that doesn't work at all, but if you're having a great time, then that's all that matters.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I hope this was informative for those of you that were curious about it and wanted to see what we would do. But there's plenty of multi-classing options. Or, I mean, I think that in most cases, like you're never wrong just making a straight up character either. Like I don't necessarily think one's inherently better than the other. They're just different.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all about playstyle too. Like you may have RP centric groups, you have combat heavy groups, a little bit of A, a little bit of B, it's depending on what works for your make the characters that you want to make.
Yeah. We made 3 unique builds and none of us really touched casting. So there's a
No, we didn't.
whole plethora of unique stuff that comes with multiclassing and casting stuff.
Yeah,
I
like
I can't I almost wanted to do a cleric druid multi-class, but I don't know. I didn't I was like, that's too much work. I'm not prepared to do that yet.
imagine. I mean, imagine being a cleric druid, like a moon druid, and then a cleric, and then concentrating on cleric spells as your shape change. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
And then of course there's always like the sorcerer paladin builds or the warlock paladin builds, or
Yep.
every other guide that has like
Sorcerer
one dip
locks.
into
The
hexblade.
Zorlocks.
Yeah.
It'd be crazy. Yeah, as if especially if the two stats align like super synergistic, like what VS
Hmm.
made with the Ranger Rogue, like you can make some powerful shit stuff.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
I like it. Well, thanks everybody for watching and hanging out with us this evening. Hopefully you know a little bit more about multiclassing and can help decide for yourself whether you like it or don't like it, or want to try it maybe in your next game. With that being said, on the slate for tomorrow, I believe 7 p.m. is gonna be more art with Bun. She's drawing one of our NPCs from campaign 2, so definitely want to check that out. Same time or same place right here, just at 7 p.m. tomorrow. And then as well, Friday, where we're doing episode 5 of campaign 2. I don't remember the number for a second, but episode 5 of campaign 2. So all those are live, and then among all of those things, we have podcasts coming out. Out of Combat comes out Thursday. That's only on our podcast and on YouTube, so make sure and go check those out. And if you don't know what Out of Combat is, it's where 3 of us from the game all get together and talk about the previous episode and kind of get more in depth of like what the characters or what the players were thinking when certain things happened. Really cool stuff. And always, if you have any questions, you can put those in the comments over there too, so we can address some of those things. With that being said, thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Yeah.